I
Yeah,
can
I
see
don't
that
like
you can.
I'm gonna assume positive intent with everybody, but one of the other events this week was Zoom bombed.
Yeah, I
It's not
understand. And
cool.
I think you can actually enable the chat. Did it work? Does it work?
I think maybe okay, cool.
Maybe, maybe not.
Let's see. Maybe not. We'll just
Maybe
go
not.
with
Okay.
Q&A. Sorry,
All right.
for the technical stuff.
No.
So we are 5 past the hour and a little bit more. Thank you for showing up for, I know it's the end of the semester or almost the end of the semester for a lot of folks. So I really appreciate that you are here today on a Friday afternoon to listen to the Physics and Astronomy Sea Change webinar. I'm Alexis Knob, and I'm happy to introduce Kiriko Takahashi, who will be taking over from here. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A. Thanks so much, and take it away.
Aloha, everybody. This is Kiriko Takahashi, and I am zooming from the warm state of Hawaii. It is still morning here, but I'm assuming most of you are in the afternoon time zones now. It's 10 a.m. here in Hawaii. I am a Japanese female with black hair, straight black hair, in my mid 40s, for those with a University of Hawaii at Manoa background. And this is just to give a little visual description of who I am for those who may not be able to see me on Zoom. So I'll go ahead and get started. Gonna share a screen. I hope everybody can see the screen here.
I can see it.
Okay, thank you for confirming it. So Alexis has invited me to kind of talk a little bit about the intersectionality of disability and diversity. My name is Kiriko Takahashi, and I am with the Center on Disability Studies at University of Hawaii at Manoa. I'm the interim director at our center, and we're gonna kind of take a look at this intersectionality today. I have a picture here on the front cover of Native Hawaiian adult female teaching a child how to kind of utilize measurements and utilizing lei, which is a Native Hawaiian that we utilize flower necklace that we give out to show our aloha or love and care to others, and they're measuring the circumference. So today's agenda is to kind of go over a little introduction and then background issues of disability and indigeneity issues, and I'll give some example projects that we're working at our center and how we are building upon these projects to support students with disabilities as well as students who are indigenous. And I don't think that there will be time to go into all the resources and tips, but I have included in the slides, and I have a QR code for the slides to share at the end. Objectives for the presentation is to begin to understand the context of underrepresentation of students with disabilities and students who are indigenous, and to share or discuss projects that aim to increase the number of students with disabilities and indigenous students into the STEM pipeline, the sciences, technology, engineering, and math. And I think Alexis has mentioned that medicine is also another area that you all cover. And please feel free to put questions in the Q&A throughout the presentation, and I'll try to address them as it comes through. So briefly, a little bit about CDS. CDS is the Center on Disability Studies, and this picture is our founding director, Dr. Robert Stodden. And our mission is to promote diverse abilities across the lifespan through interdisciplinary training, research, and service. And at our center, we have about like 30 ongoing different projects. We're all federally or grants and contract funded units. And we work on like early intervention all the way to aging that's related to health. So we don't primarily work only on education, but a lot of my research agenda involves transition of students with disabilities and or other underrepresented group into post-secondary education and supporting their transition into employment. And just one more briefly, because I know you AAPT and everybody's also from across the states. CDS is also a part of a wider network of university centers for excellence in developmental disabilities, which is funded under the US Department of Health and Human Services Administration Community Living, Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And there are 67 USIDs across the states and jurisdictions. So jurisdictions means including Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. And there are USIDs in every state and jurisdiction. And it's part of the, oh, you only see the part of the slides. Do you see the whole slide now? Can you see the whole slide? Okay, I'm so sorry. I think it was like sliding down to one side of my desktop. So there are 67, as you can see, probably the map of the US. And this USID is actually authorized under Developmental Disabilities Act of 2000. And we are here, all these centers are here to assure that individuals with developmental disabilities and other disabilities and their families participate in the design of and have access to needed community services, individualized supports, and other forms of assistance that promote self-determination, independence, productivity, and integration and inclusion of all facets of community life. So if you are, I know Alexis, you mentioned Michigan, you can check out the Michigan USID, and if you're from other states as well, if you look up the USIDs, they may have some similar type of activities or supports that's available to you about supporting students with disabilities. So I just want you to maybe jot down, since we don't have the chat and enable, but just for yourself, kind of think about what word comes to mind when you think about the word disabilities, or how you would define disabilities. And I'm just going to give maybe just a few 30 seconds or so for you to jot down. And a lot of times when people think about disability, you may come up with some negative image to the word disability, and often there is like a stigma attached to it. And also a lot of people might think disability as something more physical or something visible. But when we consider disability, it's a whole range of also hidden disabilities that people cannot see. That would include something like learning disabilities or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, mental health, systemic issues, someone who have hard of hearing, is also, or someone who with some mild visual impairment. And those are very difficult to see. And it's a whole range of disability. And we work with all students and students in the university and or in K through 12. There are a whole range of students with really different types of disability, but we don't necessarily know who may or may not have that type of disability. And when we think about disability, we also try to think of it not as something that needs fixing, um, that disability is not within that oneself to be fixed, but rather we think of disability from a social model perspective, where disability is not a problem within oneself, but within maybe the environment or in environment in which we live. For instance, if you think about um, the curve cuts or places that only have steps, and if someone is using a wheelchair, the access problem is, due to the just only having the steps and there's no elevator or ramp or and the environment is what is making that person disabled. So that's something that we think about in disability studies or in that disability framework. And current context in terms of this STEM education, as you may already know too, but there's an increase in labor, occupation, employment opportunities in the STEM field. And actually the Bureau of Labor Statistics show that from 2019 to 2029, there's like a projected 8% employment increase in STEM occupation compared to only 3.4% in non-STEM occupations. So there is really a need for everybody to be able to go into these STEM occupation, including majoring in physics and knowing that content will be very helpful. However, minorities, including students with disabilities, and those who are indigenous, continue to be underrepresented in STEM. And people with disabilities, so just to move on, sorry, I was reading Alexa's message about the chat. And people with disabilities, if you think about, are nation's largest minority, and the only one that any person can join at any time, meaning that, through accidents or illness or as with aging, people can have a disabling condition and can become disabled at any time. And it is, I think, currently around 10% of the world's population, or roughly 650 million people, live with a disability. And in the United States, with the most current census, it's about 12.6% of people have declared that they have a disability of some sort. And in 2020, 2021, in the schools, if we're taking the public schools within the US, there were 7.2 million students ages 3 to 21 served under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act during the 2020-2021 academic year, which accounts for about 15% of all students. And I just put a kind of a definition, legal definition, that's mentioned in Americans with Disabilities Act here about how disability is defined. And according to ADA, disability is defined as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, a person who has a history or record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. And it is an anti-discrimination law and providing equal access for those with disabilities. And this is an important law that really helping students with disabilities be able to pursue higher education and receive reasonable accommodation in this post-secondary education setting, as well as in, of course, an employment setting. I also want to circulate back to the indigenous part. There is no one single definition of indigenous, actually, but typically considered as people or a group of people that are descendants of or who inhabited the Americas, the Pacific, and parts of Asia and Africa prior to European colonization. And according to the United Nations, instead of having one definition, they have a list of understanding that that indicate who are considered indigenous, and I included that list in this slide here. So someone who self-identify as indigenous, some historical continuity with pre-colonial and or pre-settler societies, strong link to territories and surrounding natural resources, distinct social, economic, or political system, distinct language, culture, and beliefs, form non-dominant groups of society, and resolve to maintain and reproduce their ancestral environments and systems as distinctive people and communities. And as I mentioned about the population of people with disabilities, but there is also an increase in indigenous population in the US, and there has been 160% increase from the 2010 census to the 2020 census with regard to the Native Americans and Alaska Natives. There is also an increase in the Native Hawaiians in Hawaii and across the US. And other than, of course, Native Hawaiians in Hawaii and other parts of the US, we also have other Pacific Islanders, such as Samoans, Chamorros, Carolinians, and other smaller islands within. And I'm not sure if you are all familiar with the different island groups, but Hawaii is one of the most diverse states. And so we do have to be really mindful of the different groups who inhabit the island. So what's the intersectionality of disability and indigeneity? And as you can imagine, both groups are or have been marginalized. And people with disabilities are also member of other marginalized groups. So you can be also indigenous and have disability, and sometimes those people experience these double discrimination because they belong to two or more marginalized groups. In the state of Hawaii, there is also an overrepresentation of students who are Native Hawaiian in special education. And we see that with other communities as well, where there's underrepresented groups are overrepresented in special education. And then there's a limited opportunity for transition to post-secondary education and career for both of these groups. And partly one of the main reasons are the cultural mismatch there to the mainstream culture. So at our center, as you said, we identify that the needs of people with disabilities and people who are underrepresented, such as Native Hawaiians within the islands. And we developed and pilot a project and share that information back to the community and receive stakeholder inputs and those who are involved, and we call it the communities of practice, to develop a best practice that will help in increasing the number of students, in this case, students with disabilities and students who are indigenous, into the STEM pipeline. So what we have been doing, I have been involved in several projects over the past 15 years to really build upon what we learned one after another to support these students. The Pacific Alliance project to the left was a National Science Foundation funded grant specifically focused on transition of students with disabilities going into the post-secondary education and also into graduate programs in the STEM pipeline. And what was most helpful in this project was the mentoring of students with disabilities and supporting them to be a better self-advocate in speaking about getting accommodation or being able to explain about their disability or what they may need within the college course or the environment. And the other piece that was also important through the Pacific Alliance is supporting some of the basic academic skills, which included the mathematics. And we have identified it through this project that algebra has been one of the gatekeepers for students to be able to go on or pursue other to take other courses. And it's because a lot of times that when they are already in the K through 12 system, once they were labeled or once they have been identified as student who need support and are put in a separate classroom, for instance, for special education, they didn't have the opportunity, even though they may have the potential to be able to do the math and the sciences. They were set in a separate track and not able to learn the basic skills that they needed. So that became the major barrier for students with disabilities to pursue higher education or to go into the STEM pipeline. So what we built upon or learned from that Pacific Alliance project, we implemented in Kapilina Aim Together project, which targeted middle school and high school students. And we really worked on algebra skills and making sure that they are able to hone into that skill. Of course, we continue to have the mentoring because students with disabilities and both students also indigenous lacked role models in the college or who are in the STEM pipeline that they can look up to. So we really foster this mentoring and role model engagement with the students who participated in the activities. And the other key element in working with indigenous populations specifically is having the curriculum or the activities founded and culturally responsive so that the activities are meaningful to these students. And there is a reason for why they're learning certain math skills, or that math is not something that you learn only in school, but that's already applied within their daily environment. So we did a lot of hands-on activities to share that math has been everywhere and that math has been used, and also that the indigenous population have had a high level of math and science and engineering skills from ancient times, and that it is not something new that they they can look up to their ancestors and learn from them how they have engineered the environment to be more sustainable for the community. So from the Kapilina Aim Together, we also built project teams. So we conducted a more rigorous research project to look at twice exceptional students, where actually we wanted to expand the definition of gifted and talented, because oftentimes gifts and talents are masked by students' disabilities, and standardized testing or testing doesn't really measure the student's potential, and it can be culturally biased or culturally loaded. And what if we take students in Hawaii, if when there are questions about snow, or maybe even something related to like a specific weather, or plains and things like that in geographic I guess region that's not really available in Hawaii, it's very difficult for the students to understand and to make meaning in solving the problem. So we really try to highlight that in our project, or in identification. And instead of using like a IQ test, we looked at teacher recommendation and self-reporting of what they're interested in, and used their classroom grades, not like a grade of A, but we took students who were C or higher to support them, again, through mentoring and academic enrichment, as well as college transition support, uh, to help them get engaged in science, matriculating in science. And what we learned from this project that was implemented not only in Hawaii, but in the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Island, American Samoa, as well as New York and Iowa, and Arizona, is that students who participated in this intervention were improved, significantly increased their interest in the STEM pipeline, and had a higher level of transition into the post-secondary STEM education. And then from there, we continue to expand our different model. And actually, there are other research projects that we are doing, but we are now implementing something called Project Hokulani that has 5 components, and Hokulani means star in Hawaiian, so there are 5 points. The academic enrichment, cultural and academic mentoring, as well as disability mentoring for students with disabilities, college transition support, and we included the internship opportunity for both students with disabilities. For students with the disabilities, there's a strong research supporting those who participate in the internship before they graduate from high school or from college, have a longer term employment outcome. And what we have just started the Project Hokulani, but we already see that impact for students who are also Indigenous as well. And the other key element for this students with disabilities, for our Indigenous population, is the family involvement. A lot of the students are first generation college students, and the families are unaware of how to support their students. And also the thought process is that supporting the family will also help understanding that the students, that their child, as a community, it will become a contributing member to the community. That was kind of a lot to go through. But what we are really trying to do is tapping into the untapped talent, um, daily challenges of living with a disability and as an underrepresented group really fosters creative thinking to solve problems and adapt to new circumstances and accomplish tasks. So this position of successful individuals with disability and those who are indigenous have been found to be their high level of commitment, turning challenges into opportunities and seeking innovative solutions to problems. But in order for them to get there, people around will need to understand where they're coming from and really provide this continuous support and also opportunity for them to be able to showcase what they can do. So here is where I'm gonna talk a little bit more in depth about the project Hokulani, which is the transition program for students going into the STEM field. And this is for students who are Native Hawaiian, but we also support those who with disabilities as well. And this is funded through the U.S. Department of Education Native Hawaiian Education Program. And the PI of the project is Dr. Hejin Park, and I'm the co-PI on the project. And unfortunately, Dr. Park is not here today, but I'm going to present on her behalf on this project. So the needs of the Native Hawaiian students, which I've kind of started already talking about, but despite the increased opportunities, they still have the missed opportunities in STEM fields. They, typically have been underperforming in STEM. There's underrepresentation in the post-secondary STEM programs. And then again, the limited ohana means family engagement with children's STEM education and college transition. And their needs, oh, sorry, I put two. And the purpose of the project is to create a seamless and supportive STEM educational pipeline for Native Hawaiian youth to bolster their aspiration to enter into post-secondary STEM fields. And how we're doing it is through having a role models in various STEM fields become more visible to them. As you may have known in some of the physics areas too, there are very few role models of certain ethnicity or gender and or disability. And it's really important for the students to have this visible role model who they know that are in the field, especially in the post-secondary education. When they come into the graduate programs, it is very hard for and discouraging for students when there are very few role models who are similar to them. And there's lack of mentors. Academic and cultural mentors are so therefore provided. And academic is mainly to do with choosing or helping with their academics. Cultural mentoring is something that's important in understanding where you're coming from and how you can, as a Native Hawaiian youth, contribute back to the community. And often people who are elders called kupuna are who are very important in indigenous population is the wiser and older ones, right? And we learn from the elderly, about the traditional ways of doing and learning. We also have the STEM internship mentors and science instructors. And then to address some of the cultural barriers, or the cultural mismatch, we have the cultural mentors and the family involvement, and then doing hands-on activities within their internship site. We have also incorporated Ha Breath, which is a framework that Department of Education in Hawaii have adopted to really foster a sense of belonging for all students who are in Hawaii. And then strength-based education and growth mindset training, which helps in really thinking that the students, these are high school students, so that they can still continue to learn and that they can continue to grow, rather than maybe earlier in their lives that their teacher or their parents said, you're not very good in math, or you're not good in science, so there's no point in going into engineering, or you cannot do this. So changing that mindset for with them. And in order to support limited school funding and family resources to provide a quality STEM education, we also provide this program for free. And then we also provide stipends to students, internship stipends. And we also support the workforce by providing some site support funds and mentor stipends so that they can mentor our students. So this is a project just started last year, but over 3 implementation years, we are targeting 235 high school students, which was 100 from Oahu, which is the main island in Hawaii that has 90% of the population. We're also looking at 30 students from Lanai and 75 from Hawaii Island and 30 from Kauai. So those are smaller islands or fewer inhabitants on those other islands. And in order to participate, the priority is given to Native Hawaiian students and students with disabilities, as well as those who are gifted and talented. So we're currently in the phase 2 of the project and recruiting our second cohort of students. The students have a year-long program where they do hands-on and cultural activities as based on some of the programs that we started developing. And then they also learn about college transitions, and family members also learn about how to support their child through college transition. And then we also have internships where students select the internship of their interest based on where we have recruited. We have about 20-something internship sites, and we match the student with the internship site. And at the end of the 40-hour internship, students are to produce a group or independent project that they can showcase. And that's where the ho'ike or the celebration takes place. And as I mentioned, this is the 5 components of the model: the academic and enrichment, mentoring, college transition, internship, and ohana involvement. With the academic enrichment, we have a kind of a set, we have created our own curriculum in different areas of sciences so that students can be exposed to a wide range of science or the STEM activities. And because of the pandemic, we have been doing this sessions virtually and or hybrid. And when it is in person, we host the sessions on campus, college campuses, so that students already experience or see what the college campus is like. Here are, I'm skipping to the summer internship, just showing some of the students what they engaged in. Because Hawaii has a lot of natural resources, and aina or tie to the land is very important to the Native Hawaiian community. A lot of the internship have to do with the land or the ocean. So here you can kind of see students planting, studying the limu, which is the different types of seaweed, etc. in their internship. But others did some computer science internship, as well as going to Mauna Kea, which is the mountain in Big Island, and to kind of learn about astronomy. Some people are doing about navigation. We had 55 students enrolled in the first year, 39 from Oahu, 16 from the island of Hawaii. In terms of the school type, we have 19 students from the public school, 21 from the private school and charter school. A lot of the charter schools in Hawaii are for Native Hawaiians. So we had 11 students from the charter school, and some students didn't respond to the school type. They may be also homeschooled as well. We had grade level, 14 ninth graders, 17 10th graders, 12 11th graders, and 12 12th graders who participated. 27 male students and 22 female students, and 4 students who didn't choose the binary kind of gender response. And we had 34 students who self-disclosed as Native Hawaiian. Out of all the students, 73% were first-generation college students. And we had 3 students who disclosed their disability as having a disability. There may be others who may have had a disability but did not disclose or not have been receiving any accommodation in the K through 12 system. And we had 45 parents who participated in the Ohana gathering sessions. Preliminary result, student engagement. Students were highly motivated. You can see the comments here. They said, I wanted to do my best in the program. I wanted to get good results in the program. It was important to do my best. Doing well in the program was one of my goals. They applied to this program, so they made a high commitment. And because the parents or the ohana doesn't necessarily mean parents, because a lot of times they're caregivers, maybe their uncles and aunts or grandparents. So I don't want to just say parents, but they were also highly invested in the program. And students also showed a high commitment. I put a lot of effort into the program work. I worked hard on the program activities. I concentrated on this program work. I was a responsible student for this program. With regard to student accomplishment, 48 students completed the overall program. Some students needed to withdraw due to their commitments or unable to come to the session. And during this time, also students were able to receive a community college credit, which is also transferable to our 4-year college. And they were able to receive the course credit as part of the intervention. And I thought this was a preliminary, but a very insightful for us to move forward. The perceived influence of each program components. We had the different components and intention to enter into post-secondary STEM fields. And as you can see, 74.5% of the students felt that the internship was most influential, right, into their or change their intentions to enter into the STEM fields, as well as the science enrichment. So doing the hands-on activities and being able to apply it in the internship was significantly important or had the influence on students. 63.6% of students felt the program impacted their areas of strength. And saying this, it's very similar to some of the outcomes in the students with disabilities, where the internship, as I mentioned earlier, was a key factor for students to continue in the employment. And so this also shows the importance of applied skills and knowledge in the field and being able to contribute back to the community, especially for the indigenous population, is an important factor. And the student outcomes show the significant improvement in science achievement. We do a pre-post assessment and significant improvement in understanding the college transition process, ways to pay for college, what college STEM majors look like, what course planning might look like, as well as services in college, understanding of some of the STEM careers, and how STEM interrelates to their cultural practices. There was no significant change in their attitudinal scale and science literacy. So what's next? From this Hokulani project and the other project that we are working on, we continue to build upon and expand this program to see how disability and indigeneity intersect. So we have a very similar project funded that started this fall called Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Teens Program. And that's, again, is a high school to college transition project, which will look at the intersectionality of students with disability and those who are indigenous, not only in Hawaii, also in American Samoa, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Island, and as well, and looking at the Filipino students also as a subset of students who will be, is something that we are also adding to our research. And we also have the National Science Foundation includes Tapped into STEM project, which is a 27 institution includes project, which Alexis is, I think, is part of the NSF Includes network, and that's how she found me. And we're working on college matriculation transition to employment for students with disabilities in the STEM pipeline. And that is focused on mentoring. So mentoring is continued to be the key element for students in higher education. And Oak Foundation is another funding stream that we will be working with to to support the faculty in really working with the faculty in higher education about students with disabilities and how to and especially those who have hidden disabilities, and to support their development or to provide learning resources and understanding of how to create an inclusive classroom within the higher education, whether it's a lecture class or a lab situation. And we'll be working with a different group of faculty from different STEM, not only STEM disciplines, across the different disciplines, to create a asynchronous online module for the faculty. And so when this module is done, I'll be happy to share with everybody. We already have the module from before, but it just needs a lot more updating, especially after the pandemic. So I know that we are almost like 4 or 5 minutes to the hour. I know Alexis put, if you have any questions, please ask in the Q&A. I also put in the slide with a QR code, so you can get today's slide and you can look at it on your own. And there's also a link, and I'll put the link in the chat. So you can also use the link. Here's my contact information. Kiriko at hawaii.edu if you want to learn more about any of the projects that I described. And I know that I knew that time is going to be up. So in the slides that I shared, I do have additional slides for resources that kind of talks about universal design and how universal design for learning. So you can go to these websites and about learner variability, because that is the population that, what I want to mention is that, you're all working with really wide range of learners who come with different backgrounds. And so considering the widest option in teaching is what we need to do. And then I just put some tips, what you can do easily in your classroom and helpful strategies. So, and I'd be happy to go through these slides or, share more insights if you contact me as well. So I'm gonna end the presentation here, Alexis.
Great, thanks. And again, if you have any questions you want to ask, please use the Q&A because our chat's not working. And just to get started, because we don't have a lot of time, I just wanted to ask, what are some really good strategies to get family or family-like folks involved with students' engagement, things like that? Because you talked about that quite a bit, which seems really important.
Yeah, so it is really important, and it's not always easy, right? Especially during the pandemic, it has been really challenging because they're so busy. And in the K through 12, or the younger K through 5, for the families, we actually try to do the same kind of hands-on activity with them so that they experience, they learn about math together, because how they learn math in the classroom is so different from how they're taught in the classrooms now. And by bringing them together, and we usually provide also dinner, like supper or something, so that they can all bring, and if they have kids, they can all bring the kids as well, and provide activities for the children too, so that they can have the hour with us to do the hands-on activities and ask questions and learn about how math, they already know the math. A lot of times the parents are so afraid of math that they don't support the students or their child. So we try to make sure that they understand that it's okay, it's a learning process, and they're also utilizing it within their own environment already. So we try to foster that engagement with the parents with the K through 5. With the middle school and high school, we try to bring in informational sessions. That's what they had shared that they wanted. They really want to know how to support their children, what can they do, and we offer virtual sessions so that they can attend the virtual sessions and try to be flexible. So if they cannot attend one session, that we also have similar session again in another time. And we also have them, what we will be doing is that we'll be bringing the parents into the internship sites too, so they can also see what the science industry look like or the STEM industry look like. And so, yeah, really just communicating and engaging them in all of our activity components.
Great. And are these things that could be adapted for post-secondary ed?
Yes, for sure. I know, of course, like in terms of like family engagement, it's maybe a little bit challenge, right, for the post-secondary, because a lot of times, there's of course FERPA, and the students with disabilities or students who are also indigenous, and any college student are really trying to, figure out who they are, right? So they don't really necessarily want the parents' involvement. So up until like maybe the transition point, I think it's really important that parents understand, the kind of the type of the resources that might be available in college and help the students be prepared or understand the changes in laws. And I didn't even cover this whole range of challenge that students with disabilities face, is that the law that governs K through 12 is different from the law that governs, in the post-secondary ed. And so that transition requires a lot of support, and, for parents to become also knowledgeable about it, and sharing that with their children.
Great. And I don't see any questions in the Q&A or anything, and we are at time. So I am going to stop the recording, and thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the audience for attending.
Thank you.